SpaceX's new tiny house for sustainable living on Mars. Tiny houses are the rave now in the United States, and from the adjective attached, you'd think they're like a molehill or something for ant-sized humans. A building can be classified as a tiny house if it's just under 600 square feet. The idea is SpaceX's tiny house seems pretty good as part of their bigger picture for sustainable life on Mars. We've all been thinking about how humanity will be living on Mars. What kind of house would we be constructing? Concrete? Nah, that seems highly unlikely. How would some of the construction materials hold in the low-gravity environment of Mars? Some of the ideas conceived portray that we'll be using camping style with unique insulating materials. SpaceX has developed its own tiny house model that'd be the modern form of housing for our future settlement on Mars. What plans do Elon Musk and SpaceX have for a tiny house that would be fitting for Mars' environment? Do we have to worry about the issue of foundations given the untold soil of Mars? Welcome to your favorite channel, Unlimited SpaceX. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more exciting news about SpaceX projects and Elon Musk's many controversies. Why are tiny houses such a good idea for a planet with lower gravity than we have on Earth? Tiny houses tend to occupy insufficient ground space. And as long as we're trying to figure out how foundation materials could fit into building a house on Mars, tiny houses are unique and they can be made on wheels. It'll grant mobility and flexibility as well. Living on Mars is a radical move on its own, and it would see us adopt some somewhat out-of-the-box constructs to ensure that humankind survives. There would be no legislation dictating a kind of minimum home size measured in square footage that would rule out the option of a tiny house. Since we're not set to move to Mars, say in the next 10 years, we'd like to see the kind of structure that SpaceX has in mind for the type of tiny house building that'd be fitting for Mars. Guess who'd be giving us a taste of what it could be like? It's none other than Elon Musk. If you remember correctly, SpaceX has chosen Texas to be the home of SpaceX, officially termed Starbase. The space will be a techno city, but for space-related stuff. It'd embody the goals of Elon Musk and SpaceX. Concerning the concept of living on Mars, there was always the chance that SpaceX would attempt to replicate the housing system for Mars here at the Starbase. The world's richest man would be the first occupant of SpaceX's tiny house building. He has sold many assets and properties in recent times, and he discusses how he intends to commit to the Mars mission fully. We thought that this might mean he would probably attempt to be living within the company location, and we guessed right. For this mission, we think that Elon Musk is not necessarily trying to live according to what he's worth. Will it be a worthy investment? Maybe. That'll only make sense when SpaceX finally achieves its goal of establishing a colony on the face of Mars. The tiny house in question is on the launch site in Boca Chica, Texas. From the reports we gathered, he rented the bond from SpaceX for about $50,000, and he thinks it's fantastic. Well, if I had as much wealth as he has, I don't think I'd dwell in such a tiny house. It sure would seem like a natural source of discomfort, especially with the awareness that you could afford a bigger one. The size of the tiny house is said to be about 375 square foot, obtained from Boxable. This housing system will give SpaceX a good direction for final decisions on what kind of setup would be efficient to accommodate Earthlings on the Martian planet. The work has gone a step beyond the projected timelines and requirements necessary to build the perfect vehicle to reach Mars. The envisioned city would form the bedrock of the dream sustainable base on Mars. The vision is one for the long term, and as future interplanetary species, we can think of more exquisite prospects that await us. According to Elon Musk, tiny house or not, the stepping stone to achieving a self-sustaining city on Mars is tied to the Starship. In terms of cost, they aim to cut down the launch cost to about $2 million for every Starship flight. Generally, Elon Musk believes that the affordability of travel can make the city of Mars an actualizable dream. With Elon Musk leaning towards building about 1,000 starships that'll carry cargo, building materials, and passengers, he stated that it'd take about 20 years for that to happen. But why so long? There are a lot of metrics that must be carefully watched, and one of them is the planetary alignment. Unlike the fictional nature of spaceflight that we might have been fed with growing up, no spacecraft has been developed to navigate space. It is such that we can move swiftly at light speed and choose any point of entry into a planet's atmosphere and zing into the air and landing quite graciously. But that's not the case for our level of technology. As solid as the Starship's acceleration and propulsion system, it can only be launched at a specific angle and moving at top speeds towards a pre-ordered orientation and tilt. It all depends heavily on how well aligned the Earth is to Mars. Hence, the near 7-month journey is one-way traffic and can only be done within the space of the planetary alignment. Mars has to be in a unique position concurrent with the Earth's place in orbit around the Sun. The Starship will be well equipped to carry just enough cargo not to affect its mobility. What happens if the Starship misses the planetary alignment? Well, imagine the Starship, whether armed with payload or not, getting to the Mars orbit a little late, and Mars is no longer in the trajectory plotted for it by SpaceX. It would continue to fly deep into space and further away from Earth and Mars towards other planets in the solar system. But it can only go as far as its fuel could take it. The risk of missing the alignment should be avoided, especially with the eventual plan to transport people to Mars. It makes sense now the clarification we now have that SpaceX intends to put some timeline between each flight out of the Earth's orbit. Some of the Starship cargo could one day be the building materials for a tiny house there on Mars. Since SpaceX contracted out the small house that Elon Musk recently rented to Boxable, we speculate that they might be the ones to obtain the contract for building houses on Mars. The tiny home would comprise a living area, bathroom, bed, and kitchen in a folded box. Boxable homes will probably become a prime initiative that Elon Musk could deploy in the grand city of Mars. People have suggested that his current rental of the tiny home is to test it out, but really, it is part of some of his resolutions which he set back in 2020. The asset sale and offloading shares were well underway as he goes liquid. The home offers a cheaper option, not minding whether he could well and truly afford it or not. He sure has quite the autonomy over his affairs. If living at a Boxable tiny home could offer him at least a bit more luxury like a mansion, he might not be doing anything wrong. We might think he opted for that kind of standard of living for the Mars settlement. Let's think about this for a little. Elon Musk is already 50 years old, and the realization of the Mars project pegs out at the year 2050, which is about 28 years from now. At the time, Elon Musk could be about 78 years of age. Would he be able to go to Mars at the time? His constant push for quick returns on the project milestones could very well be a race against time. Going to Mars must be on top of his bucket list, and he's willing to go as far as possible to see it through. The present holds a lot of unknown variables, and we cannot honestly say whether he would be able to form part of the entire settlement on Mars. Space travel may have specific effects on the health of the aged. His goals might very well be for the future generations that are to come, and we'll see how his accomplishments will come to play. Elon Musk can become the hero of the world as a whole when his dream comes through against all odds.